This is an unusual episode. It was recorded a few weeks before the uprisings began, and it's part of a larger conversation meant to continue from episode 14 with Roderick Sursock. I speak with Marie-Joe Abi Nassif, the wife of Abdallah Salam, who was interviewed for episode 6 regarding the subject of civil marriage, secularism, and the debate between secular and sectarian governance. I've taken a small piece from that conversation that touches exactly on that issue, whether or not sectarian rule can survive this uprising. Of course, it's recorded before the uprising began, but the debate at its core is actually delivered within 20 minutes. So I've included that portion of the conversation for this episode. The main subject of the conversation, which is civil marriage, it'll be shared at a later date. And both Marie-Jo and I agreed that it's not really the right time for the larger episode, but it'll come out later. In the meantime, Marie-Jo eloquently delivers a call for a secular state, an overthrow of the old confessional power-sharing model we've lived in for all of Lebanon's independence, its French mandate, and Ottoman rule before, and Marie-Jo's personal relationship with the Lebanese Army, an institution her father fought for, and what that kind of unifying institution means for her directly. And given all that's happening on the streets of Beirut right now, it's all the more relevant. For episode 20, I'm Rani Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.
For us, it's a milestone towards building a civil country that respects the rights of its citizens, that it respects the existence, the fundamental rights of its citizens. But it's also a milestone in building a country that offers a common identity, an oasis of secularism in a Middle East that's torn apart by sectarianism.
Traditions and the institutions, the system that overwhelms a building of a state that you're calling for, anyone in your position would want. They're old, they're entrenched, and they're very visible in 2019. They interfere not just in civil marriage, they interfere in other things. I mean, these institutions do intervene and get their way. I don't think there's any...
They shouldn't be getting their way.
But
there is something called the state and its institutions and its laws.
There's something bigger that is intervening in issues where the state says it's none of our concern. The state is not on your side. The system, the old traditions of the country seem to outlast not just our generation, but generations to come. It doesn't look like they're fading anytime soon. And I want to get your opinion on that. 2019.
I don't want them to fade. I'm not against religious authorities in any way. They have their own rights as well to freedom of expression, to cater to their base, to people who are administratively registered under certain sects.
You're calling on the state to challenge the system, in effect. You're asking the state...
No. I'm not even asking the state to challenge anything. The laws are there.
So you want the state to stand up?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Assume its responsibilities.
Oh, of course. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying there is... it's only until we start pointing fingers and that, institutions and people who are in charge of them take ownership of their decision. I want the institutions to step up and to take ownership of their actions. Yes, that's exactly my goal.
Don't you think that every situation in Lebanon ends up in the same crossroad? An issue that is too big for the state is not touched. Whether it's arms or whether it's civil marriage, whether it's anything. It could be censorship by a certain religious group. It could be the weapons of a non-state militia. It could be anything that the state does not function for many reasons beyond the state's control. Is that a fair assessment? They can't operate the way that maybe people like you or people like me or anyone else that wants a sovereign secular state. They're not able to reach that goal.
Okay, so let's make this distinction here. there are definitely
It's a
certain
prejudice,
social
it's a
prejudice
version of the system.
yes,
Yeah.
on every single side.
Yeah.
It's not only one religion
Yeah.
or sect in Lebanon that's responsible for it. It's from
Sure.
every side. There are social prejudices that are, it's there. It's
Yeah.
embedded. You need to challenge it. You need to spread information.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
something that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But on the other side, there is the state and its institutions and its mechanisms that can be properly working
Yeah.
to also help this social prejudice
Yeah.
evolve and disappear. There is a state, there are institutions, there are laws, there are mechanisms in place that should be used for the state to reinforce and claim its sovereignty. They can actually do it.
You are a Christian, even if you're not a practicing Christian.
I am a practicing Christian.
So you are a practicing
And I'm very
Christian.
proud of it.
Sure.
And it's very different. That's a very fundamental issue. It's very different being a believer and a practicing Christian or Muslim or whatever.
Yeah.
And this belongs to your personal sphere.
Yeah.
And it's not contradictory in the least to the kind of relationship and the kind of laws that you want to be subject to that are secular, and the kind of the direct relationship that you want to be with the state.
The state doesn't care though how religious you are. That's the situation. So I mean, the system I don't think cares how Christian or how Muslim one person is. It's the old power sharing idea that for whatever reason Lebanon holds onto firmly.
It's the stamp on your ikhraj aid that defines you from the minute you're born.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So your quest is.
And that's why I removed reference to sect. It's a way of saying I want my relationship with the state to be direct without any medium.
Yeah.
I want to build a common identity. I want to help build a state that's reclaiming, strengthening its sovereignty and the sovereignty of its institutions.
That's a common theme of hope. Hope, because that's maybe the
Hope
final...
doesn't mean that you don't see the problems
Sure.
at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you are living in La La Land and just like thinking that things will go better.
Yeah.
Reinforce and claim its sovereignty. They can actually do it.
It's a perfect transition from your current political goal to your personal story. And I think your determination to see a Lebanon that does not exist right now come to existence someday. I'm going to just openly guess that this is not an accidental situation. You didn't just wake up a few months ago and say, you know what, I'm going to fight the state and get my way and that's it. I'm guessing it's something much bigger than that. And I want to explore your personal story. As a child, you believed in that one entity in Lebanon that perhaps it's not shielded the way it should be, but it does have some authority. There is some authority in the Lebanese army. Maybe it's not at the way we would want
There
it
is
to
definitely authority. There is also a very big sense of belonging among army members.
Yeah.
Of all sects, of all religion. They really believe in this institution.
So you, as a child, as a daughter, as a girl in Lebanon, you wanted to be the first army commander.
At some point, it crossed my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And is this simply by living in an army household? Did you see things that you found rewarding as a child, that this is something that you should aspire to? Because I think it's
more out of patriotism. Yeah. It's definitely more out of patriotism. A real patriot, a very, very principled man. And I grew up in this environment where we we really have this very strong sense of belonging to the country. He really fought all and went through all Lebanese wars, and this country means so much to him.
So he saw the sectarian tensions up front. I mean, he's
Absolutely, and it was like disheartening. It was very hard for him at times, especially during the war, when like friends and colleagues, would desert the army to join another armed force.
He was a general in the years leading up to the war. Did he stay in the army even as it sort of splintered and eventually pretty much fell apart? Was he still in the army in the first months of the war?
He was during all wars.
He stayed in the Lebanese army.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So even the worst times of Lebanese history.
Yes, and he was in charge of the Ministry of Economy during the war.
So this
of
is
the
late,
Ministry
late
of
80s,
late 80s.
Yeah.
But he also went through the 1958 war, so it was that long of a stretch.
Oh, he served in 58.
Yeah, he was serving in 58 as well.
Oh wow.
So.
But he rode many waves of Lebanese army history.
Yes.
Because he served in its prime.
Yes.
The glory years.
Yes,
if you
the
will.
glory years.
He also served in the not so glory years too.
Unfortunately.
Do you have any personal anecdotes maybe that you remember as a child? Him explaining the state or the army to you? Because I wanna see your world as a child in the 1980s, 1990s.
I was too young.
Well, no, but you're,
I was too young. I was 1 year. I was 1 year old in 1989.
Okay, but so you grew up in the 90s, but you grew up in the immediate post-war years. So these are not good years either for Lebanese history. And there's still the Syrian armies in Lebanon, the Israeli armies in the south, and the war is not. Do you have any? I don't know. Is the pride of the state and maybe the army too, from stories of years before your time, that you heard your father sharing with you? Like where does this real deep belief in the state come from?
So yes, it was definitely stories of the years of glory of the army, for sure.
Yeah.
But also disillusioned. Like even in the years of glory, I heard the positive side, the negative side.
Yeah.
I heard everything.
Right.
So it's as much as there's this sense of belonging and this will to fight for a better Lebanon that guided my dad's mission throughout his years in the army, including when he was he was captured by the Israelis, and he was a political prisoner for a year there.
This is during the invasion, the Israeli invasion?
Before the invasion. It was in 1973.
Oh, before the war?
Even before the war.
Sorry, he was kidnapped by the Israelis?
Yes, in 1973.
In Lebanon?
In Lebanon.
And he was taken?
He was taken with other people, in captivity.
What incident was this related to?
It was a long story, but it was an incident at the border within obviously the Lebanese border.
Yeah.
They were attacked by the Israelis, and
he proud an army released back to his country as it's falling apart.
True.
I mean, he returns to a country that's literally on the brink.
Yeah.
But he was able to give you both sides.
He was able to he was a very realistic person, and he gave me a real idea of what was it like, but never without even for a second losing the sense of the goal. Like no matter what we lived.
What was that goal exactly? The state?
The state, building a real state, a real sovereign state, with all its without its mighty powers, just because it's the only way.
That kind of passion for the state in the 1990s, you growing up as a child, I mean, you're living in post-war Lebanon. Post-war Lebanon is directly linked to the Civil War. It's still occupation. It's still mismanagement. It's corruption.
Yeah, Syrian and Israeli occupation were hard to swallow. Were very, very hard to swallow.
Sure, and even the Lebanese, I mean, domestic problems were huge, right? So it's not like everything was. It's not a normal post-war situation. It's a post-war almost devolution, going to maybe a sadder state. Did he still carry that passion with him, that the state deserves more?
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
I mean, yeah, because it's.
Was he still in the army after the war ended?
No, he went on retirement, I believe, in 1990.
Oh, so as the war ends.
As the war ends.
That is a remarkable career. You serve your state when your state is literally collapsing before your eyes.
And the last years of war were very, very, very tough for him.
These are complicated years too, right? It's not like
of course, but he did not treat them as such.
Yeah.
Not only for a second, in all of these like toughest years when he was actually in charge of like feeding the population and making sure that every population is receiving its flour and like water, whatever.
These are the core of the state.
He did not compromise for a second on his principles, even when it was about to cost him his life. And I know that in the army there is this very famous saying, "Nafiz summa a'tarid." You first execute and then you complain about it.
Right.
He was a rebel in a way, and he actually made his voice heard, and costed him his progression in the army, even when it cost him sometimes friends. Never. That's why when you tell me you should give them benefit of the doubt, I don't, because when you are a public servant, you either do your job or you resign, because you're not responsible for your own self. You're responsible for a country. You're responsible for a state. You represent the sovereignty of the state.
Do you think of him as someone who stood on his own in the army?
Many times, yeah. But there are also wonderful people always around.
Sure.
With whom you can have, who actually give you faith in this country, and you can also build, on their integrity, on their honesty, and it is possible.
Your father also served in a sectarian entity. The Lebanese Army is not a secular institution. It is representing a secular goal, I think, which is bringing people together and neutralizing them. In a sense, everyone's the same when you're fighting. It should be like that. But even in the Lebanese army, there's a hierarchy, and that is a sectarian hierarchy. Was your father... can you maybe share with me his personal view on that? Was that something that to him was a necessity to keep people in the army together? Or did he think of the sectarian component in the army in itself a problem too?
He thought of the sectarian problem across the board in Lebanon, period, as a problem.
So there's no benefit to the.
But funny enough, you were talking about the glory days of the army that he used to tell me about. One of the glory, like the way he described sometimes those glory years is when you wouldn't even ask if this person is a Christian Maronite or this person is Sunni Muslim or Shia, or like these were the glory years. When. Yeah. It didn't matter.
In the army?
Yes.
So
it didn't matter. Like, there were times where it didn't matter.
Your father, I'm guessing those glory years are particularly Fuad Shahab and those short years of late 1950s, early 1960s, where the state was putting the old feudal ways on the back seat.
And building the institutions.
I'm guessing you're holding everyone to your father's standards.
And I will continue on doing so.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
short and straight to the point, 2019 may be the year Lebanon turns the page on confessional power sharing. Things are moving rapidly on the street, and different political leaders are making their different speeches, but the protesters are still demanding for an overthrow of the regime. New episodes will keep coming out regularly during this time. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider a contribution through Patreon. The details are in the details box below. Simply click on the Patreon link or go to our website, beirutbanyan.com, and click on the Patreon button. This is an independent endeavor. Any contribution is appreciated. And to stay updated with new episodes as they're released, just subscribe to our podcast through your preferred podcast platform or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Rani Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.